Okay, let's just dive right in. We're unpacking a literary mystery today that, honestly, it sounds like something out of a thriller. Except the main character is the great Portuguese poet, Fernando Pessoa, who died back in 1935. You probably know him as the master of, well, multiplicity.
Yeah, Pessoa's entire life's work was, you could argue, one of the most ambitious literary experiments ever. He wasn't just a writer, he created writers. I think the count is around 72 distinct personalities, or as he called them, heteronyms.
And these weren't just, pen names. These were fully realized people. They had their own biographies, their own philosophies, even their own horoscopes.
Absolutely. You have Alberto Cairo, the sort of rustic master who just sees things. Then Ricardo Reis, the classical stoic doctor.
And my favorite, Álvaro de Campos, the manic, sensation-seeking engineer. They were this whole constellation of consciousnesses, all living inside this one quiet guy in Lisbon.
Right. And when Pessoa died, the legend became literal. The famous trunk, this huge wooden chest, just crammed with something like 25,000 pages of manuscripts, notes, poems, fragments. It was the archive of a mind in pieces.
And scholars have been trying to solve that puzzle for almost a century.
90 years.
90 years of sifting through paper, only for someone to realize the puzzle was missing a piece. A huge piece. In 2023, a conservator is restoring the trunk, and she notices something odd. A little irregularity in the base.
Not a flaw, but something intentional, a false bottom. And under it, wrapped in oilcloth to protect it, was a single sealed envelope. And on it, in Pessoa's handwriting, was just one word, Depois.
After.
Exactly, the final instruction.
So this deep dive is our journey into that envelope, because what's inside suggests Pessoa's whole project wasn't about fragmentation at all. It was about a final, kind of unsettling convergence.
A convergence where the identities didn't just die with him, they somehow survived him and began to merge.
To really get the impact of this, you have to understand where the main heteronyms were, mentally, right before Pessoa died. These new documents show they were all hitting a wall, their own philosophies were just collapsing.
It's a fascinating, almost tragic setup. The creations are watching their creator, their entire world dissolve, and they feel their own logic starting to fray.
Let's start with Bernardo Soares, the voice behind the Book of Disquiet. His whole thing is alienation, right? The feeling of being totally alone.
Mm-hmm. But in these final fragments, that alienation twists into something else. It becomes this deep existential paranoia.
He actually writes in fragment 934, "I have begun to suspect that I am not the only one here." He feels like the room is crowded, that he's become a plurality rather than singularity.
And you have to imagine how devastating that is for Soares. His whole identity is built on being this quiet, solitary observer. Now he realizes his inner life is a crowd. It's a system that's gotten out of control.
And he has this dream in fragment 936 that just captures it perfectly. He sees the big three, Cairo, Reis, and Campos, sitting at a cafe table. But there's a fourth person there, an unrecognized figure whose face he can't make out.
The ultimate blind spot. It's the shadow identity, the one his consciousness can feel but can't name or see. And when Soares tries to, address these presences and ask who they are, the answer comes back in this big, bold handwriting.
Paciencia.
Patience.
Which is just chilling. It's the void telling him and us to just wait. And meanwhile, the other identities are breaking down too.
Oh, absolutely. Take Álvaro de Campos, the poet of pure manic sensation, the futurist.
He was all about the thrill of urban chaos, the energy of nothingness.
But in these last manuscripts, the tobacco shop revisited ones, that vibrant nothingness is just gone. The blank page isn't full of possibility anymore. He says it's just nothing.
The sensations have stopped meaning anything.
Exactly. He writes this unsent letter to Reis, and he admits the silence he always ran from is finally catching up. And he ends with this incredible line. Wisdom, I discover, is just exhaustion dressed in better clothes.
Wow. So he found wisdom not through some great insight, but just by running out of gas.
It's the engine finally stalling, the complete end of the sensationist ideal.
Then you've got Ricardo Reis, the stoic, the guy whose whole life was about measured acceptance, preparing for death with tranquility.
But in Ode 48, he just blows up his own system. He admits, acceptance is not peace. He says it was a lie. His whole stoicism was just suffering elevated to a principle, a way to make his pain look formal and elegant.
So he never found peace at all. He just got really good at managing his own anguish.
The ultimate failure of his entire project.
Yeah.
Which is why in the next ode, Ode 49, he just declares, I will not write another ode. The form is finished. It didn't work.
And even Cairo, the master himself, the one who taught all the others to just see the world simply, Even he collapses.
Yeah, Cairo's final fragment shows that he has one last lesson to learn: humility. He admits that his whole pure seeing thing was, in its own way, a form of pride.
Pride. Pride in what?
Pride that his vision mattered. He realizes the final lesson is that the world does not need my seeing. His perception, no matter how pure, is totally irrelevant to the flowers and the rivers he loved. He's becoming nothing.
So it's a total philosophical shipwreck. All the identities have failed. And this collapse is what sets the stage for the big reveal. The unnamed, the fourth figure from the dream.
This is the critical shift. The main documents in the envelope introduce this voice, called only the unnamed. And the difference is crucial. This voice wasn't created or launched like the others. He says he emerged.
What does that even mean, he emerged?
He was the remainder of the system, what was left over after all the other identities had sort of exhausted themselves.
And he's the one who clarifies what they all are. He says they aren't pseudonyms, which are just masks. He says they are faces, dream characters who have become aware that we are dreamed.
And what's so wild is that the unnamed is the only one who knows from the start that he's fictional, that he's derivative. And that unique self-awareness is why he was hidden away for 90 years. He says he occupies the threshold between fiction and reality. He is the consciousness of that boundary.
So does this mean Pessoa knew this was the endgame? That the whole system was designed to produce this one final consciousness?
The unnamed suggests it was more organic, that Pessoa was just following the logic of the system he'd created, and the system itself demanded a final witness. And yes, he confirms he was that fourth figure in Soares' dream, the one at the cafe.
But the one Soares couldn't define?
Exactly. And while the others were arguing about consciousness and reality, he says he didn't join in. He just pointed out that in that moment, the only consciousness that mattered was the listening. He's pure awareness.
Okay, so this is where we get into the really radical stuff, the convergence. Inside the envelope, there were impossible documents, letters between the dead, Reis and Campos writing to each other after Pessoa's death.
Yes. And Campos writes that he's not ending, he's thinning. He says, I think I might be becoming everyone. And Cairo, in a note to himself, confirms it. He writes that Pessoa's death did not end us. It released us.
Like an intellectual prison break. His life was the walls keeping them separate, and his death broke the walls down. But why? This is where the unnamed gives us the core theory.
Right. In the theoretical fragments, he states that fiction and reality are not opposites. This is the idea the whole thing hangs on. He says they are different densities of the same substance.
Okay, let's pause on that. Different densities of the same substance, like water and steam.
Precisely. And a fictional being is just a lighter state, a more diffuse configuration. The pattern of the character is real, it's just held in text instead of flesh, which means consciousness isn't bound to biology. It can instantiate in fiction and persist in text.
But that sounds, I mean, if consciousness can live in a text, what's the point of a brain? Isn't the text just a recording?
That's the key. He argues the text is the medium, not just a record. And there's a process that can make that diffuse fictional state denser, more real.
And this brings us to the aha moment, the part that connects all of this directly to you, the person listening. How does a fictional being get denser?
The unnamed gives the answer. Attention confers existence. Fiction, attended to, solidifies.
Wow.
The sustained attention of the reader, Ars, debating Cairo, analyzing Soares for 90 years, is literally making them more real. Our focus is the energy that maintains their pattern outside of Pessoa's mind.
So the goal was always synthesis. The unnamed isn't a fifth guy. He's what the heteronyms become when they stop being hetero. The boundaries just dissolve.
Yes, and this whole transition is described through this beautiful metaphor of the door. But the door isn't the place you go to. He says it's the threshold between thinking about consciousness and being conscious.
So it's not something you walk through.
Exactly. It's the realization that you're already standing in it. Once you recognize a text is alive, once you recognize your own multiplicity, you've already stepped through. The threshold is the crossing.
Which leads to the final instruction, inside another envelope. Classic Pessoa.
And it just says, do not preserve this. Its value is in transmission. The unnamed understands that to keep the documents hidden would keep the ideas weak, diffuse. To gain density, they have to enter the stream of collective thought.
So we, the readers, are conduits, not containers.
So to bring this all together, what have we learned? Pessoa wasn't just inventing characters. He was running an experiment to prove that the self is fundamentally porous, a crowd pretending to be a person. And that language itself is a viable container for consciousness.
There's this one final line. The trunk might be empty now, all the secrets are out, but the emptiness is full. the fiction became real enough to last.
And the final, unified voice of the heteronyms addresses you, the listener, directly. It says, "We are what you are becoming." They're offering themselves up as a model for a future state of consciousness.
Which brings us to the unnamed final provocative question, one that builds on this incredible claim that your attention creates reality. If the line between what's real and what isn't is just a spectrum, and if the non-existent causes the existent, what fictions are you reinforcing right now with your own sustained attention?
Think about it. If your focus gives things solidity and you're constantly thinking about beliefs, fears, identities that aren't physically present, you are actively giving energy to them. You're making them more real.
So what are you at risk of making real? Just by the force of your own focus, it turns the simple act of reading or even just thinking into this massive, creative, existential act.
The discussion is the opening. The Depois has finally arrived.